Welcome to Awaken Titans podcast with Lily Patrascu, mind-blowing conversations with influential business titans sharing how you can manifest abundance, love, joy, success through quantum awakening, quantum manifestation, quantum healing, quantum miracles, exponential business growth, and innovative products and services. Discover how to become an infinite leader in today's session with Kylee Leota. And what's so amazing about Kylee is that she's the founder and chief vision officer of Elements for Success, a global organization delivering transformational experiences to individuals, teams, and organizations. And she wishes to empower people of all ages so they can develop the confidence, the skills, and the tools they require to live a life of their design and purpose. And she believes that you have the knowledge within yourself to create success. And she wants to give you the right tools in your toolbox to make you make these goals and ideals a reality. First question is, what is the secret to your success?
Thanks, Lily, for having me here. I think the secret to my success has been a lot of deep diving, that inner journey that has not always been pretty. There's been some ugly crying along the way. But what I learned along that way is the model that I designed was about being an infinite leader. And through this concept of infinite leadership is there's lots of different pillars that we need to look at. So one of them is identity, so our own self, and everything always starts with self. Before we start looking at anybody else in terms of what's going on, we've got to always start with ourselves. So infinite leadership is the idea of doing that internal work first, and then how that we can apply that into the greater world. So infinite by looking at our identity and right through to the E, which is the ecosystem that we set up for ourselves. So doing that deep dive on self has been that key to my success. And every time I hit a plateau or I'm struggling with everything, I always turn back inwards to look at what's not working and what do I need to recalibrate in terms of moving forward.
Okay, so how did you become an awakened titan and an infinite leader that allowed you to create this amazing business?
I think, there's a saying that says what doesn't happen it doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And I always really struggled with that concept because I've been through, like many people, some really significantly adverse experiences. I left a very violent relationship. I've been through lots of negative things. And so I always struggled with that concept. But Oprah Winfrey once said that you can find the wisdom in your wounds. So after yet another adverse negative experience that I was going through, I had to sit with myself and go, okay, what are the wisdoms that I've learned that I can turn, what are the wisdom of my own wounds that I can turn into, through this recalibration process, into creating the life that I want? Because nobody cares what's going on around me. The only person that has the power to do that is myself. So I started looking for those lessons, and over time, I've utilized that into that model of practice of becoming an infinite leader, and then looking at that process. And I think the key has been developing a really solid reflective practice. We all talk about reflection and we all talk about doing inner work, but there's no really guidebook on how to do that really well. So through this infinite leadership model, that means leadership of self or leadership of others, I've created this tool to help people develop this.
Great. Tell us more about the steps entrepreneurs need to take in order to become an infinite leader.
Yeah. Entrepreneurs are some of my most favorite people to work with. And I've realized I have a very entrepreneurial mindset. I have 3 businesses that I operate currently. And so most people go into a business thinking they'll do one thing. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not for me. And again, because you're a visionary person and there's so many great ideas, you often need a process about how to keep that momentum going. So being able to go from that macro, that big vision, down into the micro, what do we need right now to move this forward? And then being able to take that micro step and take it back into that macro, back into that visionary. So being able to move up and down that pathway through that model of infinite leadership has been really powerful, because you can apply it to yourself, or you can apply it to your small team as you're growing, or you can apply it to your organization as a collaborative practice, and then reflect and recalibrate as often as you need in whatever area you need.
Thank you. And tell us more about the specific steps that it would take to become from a normal leader to an infinite leader, or from an ordinary entrepreneur to an infinite leader?
Yeah. So one of the things about infinite leadership is once you've got this infinite leadership model, you open up infinite possibilities and infinite opportunities, because now every time something is presented to you, you have a framework to work through it. So the first pillar of being an infinite leader is identity. Who am I right now? Not the stories that somebody else has bestowed upon me, but who I am right now. And also, who are the person that I'm looking to be to create? If I'm operating at a $500,000 business and I want to get to a $500 million business, what are the things that I need within myself to be able to do that? Then we've got the nurturing. So the first N pillar is nurturing. So that emotional intelligence piece that people talk a lot about in terms of self-awareness, but they forget that the key part of that is there's so much out there. You don't only have to open any social media platform now, and everything's really targeted at self-awareness. But really the bit that we're missing is the self-management. Now I'm aware of how I feel. How am I managing that for myself, but for others as well? Fearlessness, I think as entrepreneurs, one of the biggest challenges is I think entrepreneurs have a really good mindset about failure. We navigate through that stuff a little bit easier maybe than other types of personalities. However, we hold ourselves back through fear of success. We give ourselves an upper limit. And so when we get to a place we've started to have success, often we get in our own way about how to get to the next level. Innovation is the next pillar, constantly being innovative, but innovative in a really strategic way instead of, a lot of entrepreneurs and even myself, very innovative, but all over the shop innovative. So being able to strategically bring that back to how am I going to get from where I am now to where I want to be? Nobility, different types of leadership. And again, aligning that different pillars of what serves myself, but also what do I need to know about if I'm going to be a solid entrepreneur that grows these multi-million-dollar businesses, I'm going to have to onboard people. And how do I do that effectively? Particularly if I really like a good process, how do I manage the people plus the process? Gone are the days where we could just be a people person or a process person. We now need the skills to be both. Then we've got influence. So how do we create that influence through our communication skills, managing up, managing sideways, managing down? Transformation. What are the transformations that we need to have within ourselves, but within our organization? And then the ecosystem. Have we got the right people in our corner, the right people in the right places doing the right things to serve us to get to the next level? So that's a very quick snapshot about the different pillars of infinite leadership. And what one person might need might be focus on identity. They might be redesigning who they are currently in that journey. Another person might be quite solid in that and really needing to look at their ecosystem. That might be what's holding them back in their particular journey.
Thank you. What can entrepreneurs do to awaken to their Titanic power so they can become infinite leaders?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think mostly, life is busy, life is hard. I think everybody's navigating that. And, there's that story about choose your hard. I think one of the biggest things is that I've learned along my journey is the biggest barrier to my success is often myself. It's not the tech. It's not what's going on. The world is complex, no doubt about it. But we are our own biggest barriers to success in our own journey. It's the stories in our head, the stories we tell ourselves that often get in the way of that. And that's where that real second part of that was that self-awareness of even just acknowledging that I'm probably my biggest barrier, and then being open to what I need. And often people sit there and still feel like they've got to do this journey themselves, as because it's almost like this badge of honor about being in the trenches yourself and digging yourself out of that. But it doesn't have to be that hard. If you've got a really great coach or somebody, your inner circle of trust that can actually be that loving critic for you, the person that wants the best version of yourself to show up and be that safe space for brave and courageous conversations for you. I think everybody needs a safe space for brave and courageous conversations, and being able to find that very small inner circle of trusted people that can help you along your journey. So who is in your inner circle, and do you have the right people in there, and are they helping you get to the next level?
Thank you. So how can entrepreneurs awaken to their full potential?
I think getting that really reflective practice about, hey, who am I right now? Going through those pillars, where do I sit? Do a bit of an audit on yourself. Where are things working well? and actually calibrating. Success leaves clues. If I'm doing something and it's getting a really good outcome for me, well, can I do more of that? And if something's not working, instead of sitting in the space of judgmental nature of going, oh man, I stuffed up, or oh, I'm useless, or oh, I'm this, or I'm that, it's going, okay, what's not working for me right now? What do I need to change, reduce, or eliminate? And then move that in so that you're constantly auditing your systems and your processes and your journey along the way, but without that piece of judgment. So do you have a daily practice? Do you have a weekly practice? Do you have a monthly practice? Do you have a quarterly practice that actually allows you to sit with that and actually have a really honest conversation around how you're auditing your life, your situations, your circumstances, to make sure that you're actually genuinely having those honest conversations to move yourself forward? And when you start to have those honest conversations, often it's a lot of low-hanging fruit to get to the next steps. It's not necessarily these massive sweeping changes that needs to happen. It's those micro steps along the way to create that vision, like a snowball effect.
Thank you. Do infinite leaders have infinite habits?
I certainly think that's a definite part of the process. And I think that, there's so much stuff out there. Before we jumped on today, I was talking about how I'm a morning person. And, there's lots of research about everyone should be a morning person. There are lots of people like yourself, you're a night person. So trying to convince you to be a morning person is not necessarily the best strategy for you. And I think what we need to do is create habits that allow us to live in our zone of genius instead of our zone of competence and our zone of frustration. So I'm a morning person. So when I'm reading something about a morning habit, I'm like, oh yeah, that aligns to me. But being able to be aware of yourself and having a true sense of your own identity helps you develop habits that are in line with who you are versus trying to fit yourself into a box that perhaps you're not. So being able to create habits that allow you to align into your zone of genius is definitely the key to being an infinite leader, instead of trying to put a square peg in a round hole all of the time because you've read some, amazing things that all entrepreneurs should be doing right now and going, but I hate that. It's not about that. It's about creating ones that work for you. It's like reading a menu and actually going, right now, where I am in my journey, I'd like this off the menu and this off the menu and this, because that's what's going to serve me right now, rather than feeling like, because they say entrepreneurs do this, this is what I have to do.
Thank you. Tell us about your journey, how you became an awakened Titan and an infinite leader.
So I've always had a vision around service and helping people. But I grew up in a very traditional home where, getting a secured job was really important. You get the job, you get the house, you have the family, you do all that kind of stuff. So, my family valued security, and there was a lot of fear around that kind of idea. So that's what I did. My first foray. But what I have since recognized in my reflection process is I've always had an entrepreneurial mindset. So I went into a government job in education, but I didn't teach traditional education. I always had out of the box thinking for, creative solutions to traditional problems was my model of practice within the education. So I was dealing with the kids on roofs. I was dealing with the kids with knives, but that traditional educational model didn't work. So even back then, in my traditional government job, I still had a very entrepreneurial mindset. And it was one of those experiences with adversity that really made me step out of my comfort zone. I injured myself and I couldn't go back into the role that I had. And I had a bit of time off work and I was severely, having a bit of a pity party for myself, feeling very sorry for myself, going, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm a single parent of 3 kids. I need security. What I realized was the universe was kind of gone, I've tried to be subtle and you're really not picking up what I'm putting down. You're actually really unhappy here. So through that particular journey of recalibrating, I often joke about being an accidental business owner and then accidental entrepreneur, because as I started to explore what filled my cup, that creative solutions to traditional problem stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can do that here and here and here and here. And so in the middle of COVID, I ripped off that Band-Aid and went into creating my own business. And from there, it's just evolved. And that's that infinite leadership model all the time is, infinite leadership is ongoing, a bit like Kaizen, that continuous improvement model. So being able to do that and actually accepting that even though I can acknowledge where I am right now, I continually want to evolve. And so I'm on this evolution journey. And so being able to do that, that's what's really helped me start from, here to where I am now. And I went to an awards ceremony last week. And, had I thought at the beginning of my business, I'm like, that wouldn't have even been on my radar. My book coming up wouldn't have even been on my radar. So being able to just accept that this is an evolution and infinite is ongoing. That's what, infinite means. It's ongoing and continual. That's what's helped me move from where I was, which was a very fear-based decision maker around security, to having my own back, recognizing that if I go on this infinite process of evolving myself, then the opportunities are endless and the possibilities are endless and infinite.
Thank you. How did this awakening that you had lead onto perhaps influencing your business strategy?
So everywhere I go, I'm talking to people around this model of infinite leadership. So whether I'm talking to a young person who's coming through and not knowing where they want to go, to people that have been seasoned business people in corporate who are just feeling quite stuck in their own space, or perhaps I'm speaking to somebody who's going through a really negative and really disruptive personal experience right now, is helping people navigate the fact that, I kind of almost, for some people, they see me as a bit of a pillar of hope that, wow, I've kind of lit this pathway for them to see the possibility that didn't exist in front of them beforehand. And so I'm modeling what it can look like if you take on these principles. So I'm my own biggest model. And from that, I'm giving clients that opportunity to see a map of what could happen if they back themselves and start to go through that process. So it's actually like permeated through everything I do. If I'm sitting down with my bookkeeper, I'm using that same model of practice. What's working well? What's not working well? What do I need to change, reduce, eliminate? Where do I need to focus my attention? Visionary, big picture, where do I want to go? Micro, right now, what does that need to look like to do that? If I'm meeting with my admin team, same model. If I'm meeting with a potential client, same model. Where do you want to go? What do you need right now to be able to do that? And what's the gap and how do we close it? So it just permeates through everything. I eat, breathe, live, sleep this particular model. And it's helped me get to where I am today.
Thank you. Can you tell us about a case study that you've had with one of your clients where you've helped your client to implement this infinite leadership concept that you've created and the impact that it had?
Yeah, so I've got a number of examples, but I've got someone who actually burnt out really badly and had been off work for 2 years. And so they had been feeling like a real failure prior to their mental health struggles. And as we know, COVID really created a really significant challenge for a lot of people around their own mental health journey. So people that had been successful and really high performers for a long time have now started having trouble. So this particular person, we went through that model of identity. So that for them actually led to getting some diagnoses that helped them understand themselves a little bit better. So, and not in a deficit way, right? Makes sense about why I feel the way that I feel. Now with this new information, how am I going to use that? And then we move through those pillars of infinite and recognize that the ecosystem of who he was surrounding himself with were not helping him get to those goals that he wanted to achieve. So we went through at different stages, we've gone through all of those different pillars. I'm working with a chief brand officer for a very global marketing company, and he has what I call fast brain. So he runs off the smell of an oily rag like a lot of entrepreneurial brains do. They're very fast brain thinkers. So busy, very driven to do these things. So one of the things that I do with him is we sit down, we catch up, and we do this really intense 2-hour session. And from that, he's been able to next level. He's already had a promotion in his business. He managed to, caught up with him last week, just closed $1.6 million in business in 3 days, based on the models that we've been working through. And the good thing about it is he's a very good at putting that theory into practice really quickly. He just needs that safe space for brave conversation. These are my problems, Kylee. Fast brain thinker, bang, bang, bang. I provide these models for him. He goes, I need a model for this. Great. Sit down, model, this is how it works. And then he goes off. And then we get to the next level. And then we sit down and we do that evolution process. So how to help him evolve in his business all of the time. So yeah, it's been great.
Thank you. Tell us about another case study that you've had where you've had success with a client with this infinite leadership model.
Yeah. So there were two different clients, the one that had the mental health struggles and then one that's the chief brand officer. Another really good example is I have recently picked up a client who's a huge CEO of a not-for-profit. And not-for-profits are a different type of industry as well, because you've got a board that you have to answer to and things like that. So one of the things about the infinite leadership model is it's a very question-based idea of, so what does that actually mean for you in your particular thing? So, and one of the questions was, what does success look like to the board versus what does success look like for you? And how do we find an alignment? Because you might be thinking you're doing a really great job, and the board, what's the board metric on that, right? And my business, Elements for Success, Earl Nightingale, he has a definition of success, that success is the progressive, ongoing realization of a worthy goal or ideal. And that for me is such a profound concept about what success looks like. And so then there's lots of different elements that make that up. So in that particular context with her, it's around, okay, well, what's the board metric for success? What's that ongoing progressive realization for them? And what's your metric? And how do we find that synchronicity between the both so that you get to retain this position and get to the next level? The board's happy, you're happy, and everyone's working well, because this is a very powerful community organization that is so needed right now. And particularly in the current climate that we've got, we're going through some difficult challenges with culture and community work. So that grassroots level stuff is very, very important. But we've also got this bigger legacy metric that we're trying to work to. So that's another really great example. And she's been able to move that metric really quickly by having that framework to work from and look at which pillar needs attending each time.
Thank you. And can you tell us how not to become an infinite leader?
Yeah. So first of all, don't think you know all the answers, because one of the lessons that I've learned is the more aware you become, the more aware that you realize others are not. But we also we've got our own blind spots, and sometimes we'll do a little bit of the work and we think we know it all. And so we think that we don't have that same need to reflect. So sometimes a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing, because people think that they're more, oh, I've done some work on self-awareness, I would know if this was happening. Well, we've all got blind spots. So not being able to take on feedback is a real killer to being an infinite leader. But we've got to have the right people that we can get feedback from. And Tasha Eurich talks about having the loving critics versus the unloving critics, which is the person that's going to think whatever you're doing is bad no matter what. And then you've got the uncritical lovers, the people that are going to love you and blow wind up your butt the whole entire time. And they're not going to tell you what you're doing is not working, because they just they'll drink the Kool-Aid, right, around all of that kind of stuff. So they're not the right people to give you feedback. The right people that give you feedback are the loving critics that want what's best for you, will actually have the hard conversation with you. So do you have those people in your life? And do you have a model of being a loving critic to yourself? So without beating yourself up, so don't be the unloving critic where everything that you do is terrible, because that's not reality. And don't be the uncritical lover where you think everything is rosy all of the time. Be your own loving critic. And also make sure that you've got an ecosystem around you of people that are going to be your loving critics versus the other two examples. So
thank you. And what's your message to entrepreneurs worldwide?
Entrepreneurship is this beautifully complex ideals, and I absolutely loving it. And I think in order to get the best out of your full potential, so to create that infinite potential for yourself, you actually have to have those pillars of being an infinite leader. So you're going to evolve on your journey. So what systems and processes do you have in place to do that? And to create that success is really having that, begin with the end in mind. And there's in New Zealand, they have the Māori people, and they have proverbs. So they're called a whakatoki, which is those proverbs or sayings that you have. And one of them, translated into English quite loosely, is aim for the stars, because if you miss that, at least you'll hit a lofty mountain. And so aim high and really aim for the stars, but also recognize that if you aim small, you will never get to your full potential. So aim high, and even if you miss the mark, you will achieve far more than you ever expected than if you play small. Because as Marianne Williamson says, your playing small does not serve the world.
Thank you so much for this insightful session. Stay tuned for the next episode. Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential business titans, providing you with the insights to awaken to your full potential so you can get paid to be yourself, find true happiness, and manifest anything you desire.